Good afternoon. Oh, is this on? Good afternoon, and welcome back. If I can please have your attention up at the podium, and you can continue to have your lunch and enjoy your dessert, but we're going to continue with the program. So thank you again, everyone, for coming out. And I do want to mention one thing, because I know there's a lot of schools here. This is a very unique forum because we know Mrs. Dingell was fighting on our behalf last month with the government shutdown, and unfortunately we did have a government shutdown, so the original forum in January was rescheduled to today's date. But that being said, we have another forum actually this Monday, just a couple of days away. So I want to encourage everybody to come out for that one. The guest speaker, it's going to be at the Holiday Inn right down the street, but the guest speaker is Dave Lorenz, who is the head of the Pure Michigan campaign, and that's going to be a phenomenal presentation, and I want to encourage the schools to come out, and of course everyone else as well. But I did want to make that announcement because it's a unique month. We actually have two forums, so we would appreciate your support and looking forward to a great presentation on Monday. So at this time, I would like to introduce our presenting sponsor, and that is Mr. Greg Flum, the Vice President and General Manager of BASF Corporation. Greg?
Thank you, Ron, and thank you, Congresswoman Dingell, for coming and presenting to us today and telling us about what you see for our future. I also want to talk a little bit about, in BASF, our statement is we create chemistry for a sustainable future. And I thought it would be important today, since everybody's wearing a BASF name tag, and in case you didn't know, you're volunteering your time today as a result. It's almost like being an employee, however, for free. So I thought you might want to understand what the challenge is and maybe how you can contribute. So the whole theme of this is we have a lot more in common than not. So by 2050, we're going to have 10 billion people. Today, we have 7.5 billion people. So with 7.5 billion people in the world, we can't provide enough clean water. We can't provide a standard of living that's acceptable. We consume an earth and a half's worth of goods to support 7.5 billion people. So when I think about what the opportunity is, it's how do we use technology to support 10 billion people, where we have to create more nutrition, we have to create housing, we have to create mobility for now another 25% of the people. Well, this was our counter. I already cheated though. That shows you what's happening right now in the population. If you don't believe that 10 billion people are going to be here by 2050, just go take a look at one of these counters and you'll see that. By 2050, 70% of our population, and this is global, will live in an urban environment. So again, that puts more pressure on how do we provide that sustainable food source, how do we provide that sustainable clean water source, and how do we make sure that we can generate the energy and consume less energy in providing that living. So when I get up in the morning, that's what I get to think about. Now that you all have the name tags on, that's what you get to think about. And really, we're looking for ideas. So there's a lot of space here. The other thing we see is by 2030, we're going to have a middle class of 4.9 billion people. What does this mean and why is it significant? Well, we're seeing more people become consumers. So as that consumption increases, what happens is there's more of a consumption of the raw materials and energy sources to produce those materials. So the standard of living, in other words, is increasing around the world. And therefore, as that standard of living increases, there's more and more consumption. We see that in mobility, so we see that in cars. In just a few years, we're going to have 1.2 billion cars on the road. That's 20% more than we have today. And what's driving that is not necessarily just North America, but it's the global standard of living that's increasing, the economies that are developing, and therefore the mobility that's required to get people around. So you can talk about autonomous vehicles, we can talk about, you know, leasing of vehicles and somehow ride sharing and sharing actual different cars. The reality is, just with that population continuously increasing, the standard of living continuously increasing, there will be more cars on the road. So for us, thinking about 10 billion people, 70% of the population in urban settings, a lot more consumption, the only answer is how do we use technology to use less to produce that standard of living? And that's true whether you're talking about agriculture and how do we grow enough food with the right nutrition, how do we build housing, how do we consume energy. I mean, technically, we can build a house today you can heat with a light bulb. Doesn't make a lot of sense in today's economics. It may be relevant and important down the road, so we can consume less. Automotive clearly fits into this, and overall consumer goods. So the more durability we can build into, say, even something as simple as a pair of shoes that we use every day today, if you can buy, well, if my kids could buy less shoes, it'd make me happier. I'll just say that. The reality is, though, everything we invest in, if we can make that investment last longer, it will mean less consumption of goods. So that's what your challenge is. That's what your name tag means. I appreciate your help. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Ron. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Greg, and BASF. And I know many of our other representatives from BASF are here, like Marika and Leah and Colleen at the front table. So thank you guys for all of your support and dedication to our region. So at this time, I actually saw somebody in a crowd. I want to recognize him. One of my predecessors and one of the great presidents of the past of the Southern Wayne County Regional Chamber of Commerce this year, Ed Clementi, former state representative. If you can please stand. And I was looking around to see if Alan Anderson was here, but I don't believe he is. So I just want to cover myself just in case he is. But I have some great predecessors, and I look up to everything they do, and I've learned a lot from both of them. So thank you, Ed, for being here. So at this time, I would like to recognize our elected officials who are with us today. And we do have a long list, and I think it's important to recognize all of them. But I do want to make this disclaimer in case we missed anyone. You know, we're very sorry about that, but we do our best to make sure that we cover everybody as they come in. So as I recognize your name, if you could please stand, and then we'll hold our applause to the very end, starting with the Honorable Thomas Cameron of the Michigan Court of Appeals, the Honorable Jennifer Coleman Hassan of the 33rd District Court, City of Dearborn Mayor Jack O'Reilly, City of Gibraltar Mayor Jim Goris, my mayor, the City of Riverview Mayor Andy Swift, City of Flat Rock Mayor Jonathan Jarpuski, City of Taylor Mayor Rick Solers, City of Trenton Mayor Kyle Stack, and Brownstown Supervisor Andy Linko. I'm not sure if he made it, but he was on my list. So City of Allen Park Council Member Kevin Rourke, City of Wyandotte Council Member Megan Mayani, City of Wyandotte Council Member Leonard Sabuda, City of Wyandotte Council Member Chris Calvin, and City of Lincoln Park Councilman Larry Kelsey, Brownstown Township Trustee Steve Allen, City of Gibraltar Treasurer Scott Dennison, Wayne County Commissioner Ray Basham, Huron Township Supervisor and Southern Wayne County Regional Chamber Board Member David Glabe. David, thank you. My former boss, and I was so happy to see him here today, City of Dearborn Heights Mayor Dan Palecko. Thank you, Mayor Palecko. Thank you. That means a lot coming from your former boss. Wayne County Clerk Kathy Garrett. And I do have a few more. A couple of former elected officials, former State Senator Bruce Patterson, former City of Riverview Mayor Tim Durand, former Brownstown Township Deputy Supervisor Greg Maher, and former State Representative Andy Candrivas, who's now working with Mr. Evans' office, and former Congressman Hanson Clark. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. And at this time, I'd like to acknowledge our executive board members. I know not all of them could be here today, but as I call your name, if you could please stand, starting with the chair of our board of directors, Kathy Kane. We have our first vice chair, Robert Jones of AT&T, our second vice chair, Ronnie Ruel of PNC Bank, the secretary of our board, Chriselle Kohler of Elder Care Home Care Group, the treasurer, Carol Krumer of the News Herald, and our immediate past chairman, David Goodwin of Goodwin Lademan and Associates, and at-large members, Tony Arminiak of Wayne County Community College District, Greg Flum of BASF Corporation, Chris Baran, the president of Baker College of Allen Park, and Rob Bovitz of Bovitz CPA. Thank you so much for your support. And we have 43 board members with the chamber, so it's pretty interesting for me having 43 bosses. But if you're a board member of the chamber, could you please stand and be recognized? Mary Jarosh, thank you. So Louis Pisker with Wayne Metropolitan Community Action Agency, and then Kyle Mazurek with Comcast. And I'm sure there was some others, but thank you all for your support and for attending today's event. And then what I would like to also do is recognize our ambassadors. The chamber ambassadors are really the heart and soul of the chamber. We have five staff members at this point, a couple of part-timers. But the chamber ambassadors are members who are volunteers who are there on a day-to-day basis helping us by volunteering at events, recruiting new members, and welcoming new members to the chamber. And we have a few ambassadors that are in attendance today. And again, if I missed anyone, please let me know. But we have Mark Tremper with Downriver Community Federal Credit Union, Sandy Spradlin with Contract Furniture Solutions, and Linda Stanko with Everybody Ready. If you could please stand. And then, did I miss anybody? I want to make sure I didn't miss anyone, because I'm going off of notes here. Al Bates with Second Step Advertising. Thank you. So thank you all for your support of the chamber. And I'm sure I missed someone, so if you were shy, thank you again for all your support. And then I would also like to recognize our attending high schools and their sponsors. So if you could please stand and be recognized, high schools, starting with Cabrini High School, sponsored by Zeal Credit Union. Next, we have Gabriel Richard High School, sponsored by Fritz Enterprises. Huron High School, sponsored by SEMCA. And Riverview High School, sponsored by Caesar Capital Management. And Mary, is Allen Park High School with us today? Oh, okay, Allen Park High School, sponsored by State Representative Frank Liberati. And Trenton High School, sponsored by the Trenton Trib. I think it's very important that our students are involved in the political process, and the Chamber's honored to be a part of your educational experience this morning. So thank you all for coming. We appreciate your time. I do want to mention that there are some blue question cards on your tables, and we will have a Q&A session following Mrs. Dingell's presentation. So during the presentation, if you would write your question on those cards and raise them up, and one of our staff members will come by and collect those and bring them up for the Q&A session. So I would like to introduce to you William Elson, the Vice President and General Counsel of Fritz Enterprises, who will be introducing today's speaker.
Hello, everybody. This is not the first time I've had the pleasure of introducing Debbie Dingell, and hopefully it won't be my last. She has had a long history of dedicated public service. In fact, I could go through the list of what she has done, but I'd be up here much too long. I can tell you that she is a strong advocate of women's rights and issues for children, which are really important, obviously, for the country, particularly for our young people. And what I've had the pleasure of seeing firsthand is how Debbie will work with those of differing political persuasions to work across the aisle, as they call it, to find common ground and to find solutions to problems that we're all facing. And it's a result of that kind of effort that I think the country can move forward, and hopefully we have others who have the same attitude toward compromise, which is what the country was built on. So with that, I'd just like to introduce Debbie Dingell.
Thank you. Okay, I want to make sure. Can you hear me? Thank you, Bill, for that introduction. And he's great. Good afternoon to everybody. I'm impressed with this crowd. I hope it was worth coming to lunch today. And I also, first of all, I want to first thank Ron for the great job you're doing at the chamber and for the entire chamber staff. Many of us were here Friday night for the Downriver Expo, and they did a great job at that, and you're doing a great job. Thank you for everything you're doing. Thanks. And I really want to thank all of the elected officials. I'm blessed to work with I haven't talked to them. I'm looking at Rick. Please don't leave till I get you today. But all of the mayors are absolutely, positively, being an elected official isn't easy. And being an elected official as a mayor is really hard. You're the person on the ground that the person screams at about the trash pickup, the snow removal, all those things and we're really lucky to have the number of people that are willing to serve in these elected officials. And I want to thank every elected official, the mayors, the city council, Kathy from the Wayne County Clerk's office, the judges, for being willing to serve, because you all are fabulous. And thank you for what you do every single day to make our community stronger and better. So thank you very much. So it is great to be here, and we sort of have this tradition, not sort of, we have a tradition that we start the year with sort of the legislative outlook, and we had to cancel the legislative outlook in January because of the congressional shutdown. And since then, we've had another shutdown, and I'm going to say to you, front and center, this is not a way to run the government or a railroad. The railroad's had too many crashes lately, and this government is starting to head for crashes. So we shut down in January. We shut down for a few hours last week, and we've got to start to do a better job of running this government. I'm going to talk to you about the state of the budget negotiations. The fact of the matter is, I'm unfortunately willing to bet that most people think that we actually passed something in last week before I came home on that very snowy weekend. And we now have a budget that expires on March 23rd. And while we agreed in principle up here, we still have to agree to a continuing resolution that I hope is going to go for the rest of the year. I'm also going to say this to you, that as we are doing this and we're talking about this, you can't run the government this way. We can't run businesses. Businesses need certainty. You can't tell GM or Ford or Chrysler, oh, this is the budget you've got for the next 3 weeks, and we'll tell you in 3 weeks what you need to have. Secretary Mattis, who is one of the people, when we had the State of the Union, that there was bipartisan, everybody stood and applauded. He is a great Secretary of Defense. He is a very wise man. I had dinner with him about 3 weeks ago, and he said the number one enemy of the national security in the United States of America is these continuing resolutions. And we need to think about that. Some days I may think it's doing Twitter and, negotiating North Korea, but we've got to stop this kicking the can down the road, and then my staff gets mad at me because I also say we do have to reduce the budget. We do have to reduce the deficit. We have to start having some real conversations. We have a lot of young people, and it's great to see so many young people here, but we've got a moral responsibility to you that we're not going to leave this country in great debt. So we need to, as a country, have a real discussion about what our values are and what we're going to support and what we're going to fund. And we do need to keep this country safe. That was one of we needed to lift the cap. we are in a more dangerous world than we once were in. But we also had to lift the cap on non-defense spending, and a lot of people didn't recognize that. 1/3 of our national security budget is in the non-defense spending, and Social Security and Medicare are not in there. I am somebody who is going to fight for Medicare and Social Security to her dying day. It is a promise we have made to people. They have put money in. We've got to make sure that we are honoring our commitment, but we do need to balance the budget. And I agree with Rand Paul. My staff gets really mad when I say this. But I don't know why we're paying for the sex habits of quail that are on cocaine. And there may be some great medical research, then let's privately fund it. So we do need to make some really tough decisions, but we got to stop kicking the can down the road. And we'll see what happens in the next few weeks. I can tell you I have made no speech engagements for the March 23rd, although the kids are going to march on March 24th, and I want to be there supporting them. So I'm already getting in trouble. This speech is, I'm talking from my heart. I did this in Ann Arbor last week, and I'm doing it again today. I want to talk about what happened in Florida. It's not okay. Our kids should not be having active shooter drills. Our kids shouldn't be hiding in closets. We've got to do something. And I'm married to John Dingell, and Christopher Dingell's my stepson. So listen, I get it better than almost anybody in this room, both sides. And by the way, I've had to hide in a closet when I was scared that I might get shot. So I really do understand this from both sides. But I think that our young people are the ones whose voices are going to be heard. We are here to support you every step of the way. I hope you are going to march on March 24th. I hope that you're going to skip school. Sorry, school principals. I said to some of the school leaders yesterday, can we teach them? Can we do a government class outside and teach them advocacy? Because here's what I'm going to say about guns. We got to stop going to our corners and everybody screaming. I have been working with Fred Upton, who is Republican from the western side of the state. He and I are members of a group called Problem Solvers, 26 Republicans and 26 Democrats. You know what? We are Americans. We are Americans first, and we've got to stop letting people divide us with fear and hatred. United we stand, divided we fall. And that's one of the things that we've really got to start to remember. So Fred and I have been talking nonstop since we came home on Friday. And we are determined that we are going to lead on a bill. We're going to write a bill so that when the kids march on the 24th, they have something that they can support. And we're trying not to go, we need to not go to our corners and say we want to ban this, we want to ban that. We need to talk. So I saw Mike Pichard on Saturday night, the Oakland County Sheriff. He had been with the FBI last week. And I said, Mike, what do we need to do? What do you need in law enforcement? He gave us two ideas. They're both going to be in the bill. We need an 800 number that if somebody's worried about somebody, they can call. And there needs to be 2 sets of eyes. And now I've talked to a number of law enforcement, and they're saying 3 sets of eyes. So when you call the national number, it gets immediately referred down to the local level so the local law enforcement can put eyes on it, look into the situation, be aware of it, and if they need to help. And 2, we need to make sure that local law enforcement has the tools that they need, that if somebody is a threat to themselves or to the community, that they can take their guns away. That's just one of the things. You know, we're talking, the president yesterday told the Justice Department to write a regulation that eliminate the bump stock. Everybody's agreed on that for months. Well, there's some people that think that you don't have the authority to eliminate the bump stock at the executive branch, and it's going to end up in the courts. Part of that bill is going to be, we're going to eliminate the bump stock so that you can't do what happened in Las Vegas. And Fred yesterday on his side of the state met with all of his stakeholders. I have been talking to law enforcement all over our district. I called Kim Worthy, Brian Mackey, who are the Washtenaw and the Wayne County prosecutors. I've been meeting with mental health experts. And we got to be really careful because the mental health community is really worried that they're going to get stigmatized by this. We've got to remove the stigma on mental health issues. And we have to make sure that if somebody needs somebody, you know, just because you're depressed or you're suffering from anxiety doesn't mean that you're a threat to someone. But we have so stigmatized mental health issues in this country that people are afraid to say that they have a problem. We need to be able to deal within our community somebody who has a problem, but not stigmatize all those that do have a problem. I'm calling the ACLU and saying, okay, I want to help protect people's rights, but I also want to make sure that nobody's a danger in our community. And I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to be really honest. I'm being more honest than I've ever been, and I'm not exactly known for not being honest. But I can, and I'm looking at Jack. Jack remembers when this was so bad. My sister, who I loved, my baby sister, suffered from, Lord knows, every single problem there was to suffer from. And I knew she was a threat to herself. I tried to make a system work. I'm supposed to be able to know how to navigate a system to be able to keep somebody from harming themselves. You cannot make the current system work. Even when you know that somebody is a threat to themselves, you cannot get them the help they want if they don't want the help. That's a broken system. And my sister's dead because I couldn't help her. I don't want any other family to have to go through what I went through. We have to have honest conversations so that as communities we can address the real problems we have. And as adults, we all go into our corners. We don't want to have the traditional conversation. I'm looking at the young people at the back of the room. You are our future. You are the ones that can make a difference. And I hope everybody in this room is going to support the young people and going out there and saying, talk to each other. Let's bring about real change. And when we go back next week, Fred and I are going to have a bill, and I would welcome anybody's thoughts, anybody's ideas. I am talking to everybody and anybody. I'm talking to the parents. I'm talking to the kids. I'm talking to everybody because that's how we're going to solve it, is by understanding and trying to figure out what are the tools we need as a community. All right. I'm sorry. This one upsets me. So let's talk about some other stuff. Healthcare. I know a lot of you are worried about health care in this community. And I'm the first person to say the Affordable Care Act wasn't a perfect bill. I've been saying from the day I was elected that we need to change the bill, we need to fine-tune the bill. And I can tell you more now than ever, there are more people paying more for the premiums, having higher deductibles, and they can't afford their health care. And we've got to fix that. But I believe that if you live in America, you have a right for quality, affordable health care, period. You shouldn't have to worry if you can go to a doctor. So what I want to do is to work with Republicans. Republicans keep trying to repeal it. Then when we pass the tax bill, and I'm going to say this, I am never going to denounce somebody taking more money home. I'm never going to denounce more jobs with Chrysler in the state of Michigan. That's, you know, when something good happens, we celebrate it. But I am going to denounce that the part of that tax bill destabilized the health insurance marketplace, and that part of the money people are relying on isn't there, and that we all need to get in the room and figure this out. We need to stabilize the marketplace. We need to do something about the small business mandate. Many of you are small business owners. But we need to do something so that every single American doesn't have to worry about whether they can afford to go to the doctor if they get sick, or if they get diagnosed with cancer, whether they're going to be able to afford their chemo. And you know, right now, the story I keep hearing more and more is the seniors. Insulin has tripled, quadrupled. I can't, you know, the first time I heard the story, I got upset when the senior told me she was cutting her insulin in half and so that she could afford her insulin and buy food. I've heard that story 30 times now. That's not okay. That should not be okay in America. We have to do something to stabilize healthcare, and I'm going to keep working on it. The Problem Solvers, which is this group of 26 Republicans and 26 Democrats, has got a proposal, and we're going to keep pushing to try to do that. And we also have to tackle the high cost of prescription drugs. As I just talked about insulin, but there are too many drugs that are escalating out of control. People are buying patents. They're just charging money because they can charge money and people can't afford it. It's not right. One way to lower the cost is to allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices in Medicare Part D, and I would support that. It's this, we've got to do something. Now, President Trump says he wants to do something about it. Well, let's work with us. Let's do something to lower the cost of prescription drugs. I'll tell you another issue I'm really worried about, and it matters downriver. It matters here, and that's pensions. You know, I was one of the people that said Donald Trump could win. A lot of you thought I was certifiable. But he did win. And one of the reasons he won is because he talked about issues that matter to people in our communities. Talked about trade. I'll talk about that in a minute. Too many of us have seen jobs shipped overseas, factories shuttered, and their jobs gone. But there are a whole lot of people that worked a lifetime downriver, invested in their pensions, put money into their pensions, and suddenly their pensions are threatened. The Central Pension Fund, the Teamsters, we have the largest group in the 12th District of Teamsters that are a member of that fund. People are threatening, their pensions are being threatened to be cut by 80%. We have the steel companies that have all but eliminated their pensions. We have to make sure that we probably, for the young people, you're never going to see the defined pension that most of us got to know if you were in the auto industry or the steel industry or working for one of these companies. But we have a whole lot of people in our community that played by the rules. They invested. They put their money. It's not a handout, not when you invested in your pension. And we need to go in and make sure that these pension funds are safe and secure. And if you earned a pension, your pension is going to be there, period. That's another issue we really have to focus on. Now, the pension or the budget that the continuing resolution that expires on the 23rd did establish a bilateral pension committee to look at this issue and make recommendations by the end of the year. I may or may not be on it. I'm one of the names that's out there. But to me, that's one of the most important things I can do, because I really do believe that if you worked a lifetime, you deserve and are owed your pension. Another issue that's a tough issue, but one we got to talk about, is immigration reform. We need comprehensive immigration reform in this country. And first, I want to make it really clear. We need to keep this country safe. Our national security needs to be the #1 issue at all times. We need to make sure we're not letting anybody in from ISIS. And nobody wants anybody from the M13 gang to come into this country, period. But what I took offense at was trying to paint every immigrant as a member of an MS-13 gang. You know, we've got some real crises in this country. We got farmers whose crops aren't being picked. We got a hospitality industry, some of them right here downriver, that can't hire people to make sure that their hotels and their motels and their restaurants are running. The construction industry is short on people. GM, Ford, and Chrysler are talking about it. We wouldn't have this crisis right now if we would stop going to our corners, and if we weren't so afraid of it, and if we didn't pass a comprehensive immigration reform